Hi, I'm Thomas Butler and you're listening to CADENCE When I Die, a small show about composers and sound artists living in, working in, or just visiting Scotland. In this episode, we meet Gareth Williams. Originally a singer-songwriter, Gareth was seduced into writing opera by a love of storytelling. However, his piano bar roots mean he isn't entirely sure how to describe his own work. Is it pop music or contemporary classical music? Or perhaps something in between? Currently Scottish Opera's composer in residence, Gareth has written many works for the stage, but also writes site-specific pieces, including an opera that takes place in a bar whilst the bar is still open, and another which played out at the top of an Aberdeenshire lighthouse. Later I'll talk with him about developing both these shows, but first let's hear why his work is so hard to categorise. This is Tenterhooks. So Gareth, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us about Tenterhooks.
Tenterhooks is a little piece I wrote on request from Mark O'Keefe, the trumpeter. And it's one of the very first times I appeared in my own pieces. So I'm there playing piano and singing that one note repeatedly with 8 different words. It was quite minimal in that sense.
There's a kind of 3 a.m. nighttime feel in this, and was that reflected in the rest of the gig, or is this just this one piece that was that kind of mood?
When you a request for a piece that you know is going in with other composers, and it's going to be, I think it was 5 brand new pieces. Some people don't particularly like to do that, but I love that actually, because I think that means you get to do something slightly more extremely you, because you know it's going to be sitting with people you know and other brand new pieces as well. So I always think you can go slightly more to the nth degree. And I think that's a kind of nth degree piece because, well, it's about a minimalist piece I've ever written. It's so dangerously close to pop, which is kind of one of my favourite places to be. But that was the first time I really went there. So that was quite a success, I think, for me.
Why is being so close to pop a dangerous thing?
Well, I don't know. The first of my kind of hang-ups. Do you know what I mean by dangerous? Or do you feel that too? Or is that it?
I don't feel it's a worrying place to be. I think I know what you mean about being in that kind of area. And is it a worry that you're mistaken for pop, or is it something
I think
else?
maybe initially it was that you might, not mistaken, but dismissed as is a possibility. But then by who, it doesn't really matter. And I was thinking earlier, I wonder what kind of music I do write. I don't write pop, or then it made me think, do I write contemporary classical music? I'm not 100% sure.
So is the difference the audience then? Is if you've got a pop audience, does that make it a pop thing? And if you've got a contemporary classical thing, it makes it that?
Yeah, I guess. But I do remember what interested me about that piece was putting that material under the spotlight of a concert hall. So the audience go quiet and they all sit in a row and look at it, and suddenly it affects the material. It changes. It ceases to be one or the other, I think. So that interests me.
Because all the ingredients in that piece, they are found clearly in all types of pop music. I mean, that's almost like a Tom Waitsy bluesy trumpet over the top. There's an almost Bon Iver kind of vocal at the top, and that chord or piano playing is found everywhere. So what is it about the music which is essentially not pop?
I think it does even less than pop. It goes through the gauntlet and comes out emerging as a piece of classical music somehow.
Because it's just so darn minimalist.
Yeah, pesky minimalist.
Does it matter to you that you are a composer of contemporary classical music as a kind of title, as it were? Or does it matter what you call yourself or how you describe yourself?
I guess it shouldn't matter, but these definitions are very helpful sometimes as well. And it does help to know what it is what you're making. But the thing is, contemporary music is the kind of music, is the genre of music where I learned about music. And I learned when I talk about music, I usually stay in the world of contemporary classical music to do it because, it's very rich. There's a lot of ways to talk about it, and there's a culture of talking about it. So in that sense, contemporary classical music is brilliant. It allows me to vocalise and to talk about my work. I'm not 100% sure that what I make is contemporary classical music.
Do you start as a songwriter, as a pop songwriter, or do you start as a classical composer?
Oh, I started as a singer-songwriter, and I played piano and played guitar back in Ireland. Yeah, I went to university to study music and discovered that there was this other stuff, this contemporary, weird stuff, I guess. It really is. And I hadn't really heard any live classical music up to that point. I didn't hear a string quartet till I was at university. I didn't see an opera till I was at university, but I found all that very exciting, and that opened up, as I say, ways to look at music and to go, oh God, I didn't know you could do that, or that was weird and wonderful. So I sort of fell in love with contemporary music at that point, and my songwriting disappeared. It got submerged somewhere, and then that's been a sort of 10-year wrestle or 15-year wrestle to try and balance the books and to allow both sides of my musical experience to abide together.
You play piano in that piece, and there's something I've noticed through quite a lot of your work, in that even if you are not personally playing it, it is kind of piano driven, and you kind of inhabit this piece in the performance even if you're not actually playing it yourself. It's almost like you're sitting in your study playing your piano, singing your song, and then you're kind of imagining around that.
Yeah, I think that relationship between the keys and the voice is a really lovely one, and most of my music has that role, with the piano as accompaniment and the voice as this magical thing that sits on top. All I can say is it's very wonderful to be inside your own piece and to have really good players around you playing and responding to you. Well, to be honest, I'm not a wonderful piano player. There's a reason there's only 4 chords in that piece. That's all I'm going to say. But it is very wonderful then to be inside your piece and to work a room, because I don't think that happens enough in classical music. We don't work the room. So when I play the piano in a bar and it's sing-songy, people are asking for their favourite songs, it's all happening. But I see my role in that social capacity to make people commune in some way around the piano. So you can make the room feel sad, you can make the room feel happy, you can make everyone drink more, you can make everyone be quiet. And that's a skill, and I think that's doing that job for, I guess, since I was about 18, is probably where I've learned the most about music and the most about why I like it and what it's for and what it does to people.
From this very song-based output, how did you make that leap to opera?
By accident. It's always by accident, isn't it? I was always tinkering with the notion of confessional art and autobiographical material in music. A piece I wrote in 2004 started with a cover version of the very first piece of music I ever heard, and then moved through old cine film footage and things like that, and arrived at the very last piece I just finished. So in that sense, structurally, it was held together by my memories and things like that. And I think the thing that got me out of it was opera, really, because I think I was heading towards a bit of a dead end with that way of exploring material and presenting stuff that was personal, but you still wanted people to engage with and have an experience with. That notion they're playing our song, I think that's the best thing in music, that people attach and grab hold of something like "You Are My Sunshine," or I have a drunken uncle who sings "Ruby, Don't Take Your Love to Town" at every wedding I've ever been at. And so that song for me brings me back to a family wedding, but it'll do 100 different things for 100 different people, and I think that's very interesting. And so I moved from autobiographical to biographical. The very first opera I wrote was in about 2007, and it didn't start life as an opera. I thought it was a music theatre piece about boxing, and then gradually it turned into an opera.
Your autobiography provided this structural narrative in your music, so that would naturally lead you to opera. That would be the natural conclusion of that, surely, a story and the music.
I think so. It's as simple as that, isn't it? It's all about the text and story and narrative and character. And I think so much of my influences were literary to begin with, in terms of structure. And I love stories and people, and I like to fill my operas full of the people I meet, and they talk the way, or they sing the way people talk. And I find that very interesting, the people who populate my operas. And I always can hope that they couldn't really exist in anyone else's operas.
So your opera, The Sloanes Project, is going to be performed in Glasgow and Edinburgh this month. What is The Sloanes Project?
The Sloanes Project is an opera I've written with a librettist called David Brock, and it's a site-specific work, naturally based in Sloanes.
So for those who haven't been to Sloanes, just explain what the place is like and where it is.
Sloanes is slap bang in the middle of Glasgow city centre, and it's a little cobbled street that takes you down to a 3-storey bar and restaurant, and it's the oldest bar and restaurant in Scotland. I think you have to say bar and restaurant because it's not necessarily the oldest bar. And it's very beautiful. You have a nice ballroom at the top. You've a couple of little snugs where the merchants used to take their mistresses. You have a nice bar downstairs. It's just a very wonderful establishment. It inspired me to think that this place deserves an opera. An opera could work in here in a very strange way. We gathered up old stories from the staff and from the patrons and from the boozers and from the just people who'd been in and out of this bar this bar was 200 years old, so there was quite a few.
So the stories that you found and you collated from the people in the bar, how did you then take that and make... how long was it? An hour-long work?
An hour long, yeah.
So how did you make an hour-long work?
Sloanes was a place where... It's off the arcade where all the jewellers are, so it was traditionally the place you would come to celebrate your engagement. And then the ballroom upstairs is a wedding venue. So we had so many stories about engagements and couples returning year after year to have a drink on the day they got engaged. Really sweet, lovely stories. And on the first floor, there's lots of old photographs of the dancing from back in the day. And I remember a woman coming in and saying, oh, that's my dad in that photograph, but that's not my mum. And I think we couldn't use that one, but it just felt like, oh wow, if ever there was an opera, it's right there. We heard Peter Manuel, the serial killer, used to drink in Sloane's in the 60s. We heard a ghost story about a manageress who was stealing from the till to buy pearls. And we heard a story of a wake that was due to be on the first floor, but the coffin wouldn't fit up the stairs, so the two guys carried their dead friend up and set him on the bar. So those are the kind of scenes that were happening. And for me, they're wonderful. I mean, from there on, we had a bit of creative license, and we went with those sorts of scenes. So, for example, in one scene, we decided that it was feasible that perhaps Chopin had popped in for a drink in Sloane's after his recital here. So I guess I assembled the opera then as a group of scenes.
And how did he use the venue to put on the opera?
We planted the tenor up at the bar, set up a little Cayley looking band, so accordion and violin and things like that. Something that didn't look too incongruous. And then he started to sing. And one of the old drunks beside him tried to stop the opera, thinking he was just being rowdy. And off we went, and we explored the building, and there was lots of little areas, and we finished off with a big scene up in the ballroom at the end. So we tried to use the whole space.
So you hadn't closed the bar, you'd just started?
No, we just started. Then there was people just in who just wanted to do the pub quiz and were very annoyed it wasn't on. I tried to fill the piece with the sound of the bar. So the piece starts with some wine glasses being rubbed in the corner, which felt to me that, okay, we'll get a chord to do that, and then from that chord we'll get a note, and our singer could come in and have something to sing about.
Okay, 2 fizzy wines, please. Enjoy while it lasts. I bought my missus house back in 19 in the very arcade. Half a year's pay this one was. Aye, thanks for that, big man. Worth a bloody fortune, Tom Collin the arcade said. More than she was worth. And when she left me, this was all she left me. Half a year's pay this one was. You this ring is cussed. Aye, it's always one, eh? Remember the night we first met? It was in this very room. I drank 8 pints, and you drank something pink. Maybe we could get married here.
In the Brambles room, the jeweled stones crown, featuring a magnificent vaulted ceiling, a period marble fireplace, and intricate stained glass windows.
You'll never make your own choices again. Once you say I do, you go business, old man. We're having a perfectly lovely day. Dreaming of what we've always dreamed of. This will never let you down. This will always be there. Stand for if I buy you a drink, will you leave us alone?
I always like to seduce my characters into singing somehow, whether that's in sort of by magical means or by a plant of some description.
So for you, the world of opera, or the world in which your operas take place, instead of, as in many other operas, they just sing, and that's just the world they live in, they just sing everything. Your characters are speaking characters, then need to find a voice or to find a song, or how do you think of that?
I love the notion of having to seduce a character into singing, or I love that somebody sings out of necessity almost, or sings because it's a very wonderful thing to do. Sometimes I have written operas where people come on stage and it's sung, and that's that. That doesn't tickle me as much as I really enjoy finding a way to sneak that music in. And I do that with radio shows and with that notion that these characters have favourite songs. I think if they're linked and I have an understanding of what kind of music these characters would like in real life, then I can understand what they might sing to one another and what it would take to get them singing. Because you see men who don't sing ever in their lives. They go to a football stadium and they chant and they sing at the top of their voices on a Sunday afternoon. So we're never that far from an ecstatic release of song.
Quite a few of your narratives are told through song. I mean, apart from the Stones project, I remember in The Elephant Angel, there is a chorus of children who sing, and then also in Last One Out, there are many songs that are sung on the radio that the characters continue singing.
Last One Out was a commission for last year's Sound Festival, and it was premiered in Fraserburgh Lighthouse. And it's an opera by Johnny McKnight and I. It's such a clever libretto because there are 3 country songs, once again, that turn up on this country and western radio station. And inside the 3 songs is the entire plot of the opera.
So what is that plot?
We hear about a woman who comes to town, falls in love, has a child, but the marriage falls apart. And in the 3rd song we hear that she goes to the lighthouse and hangs herself. And in real life then we have the waitress listening to these songs on the radio. So we hear about this woman who turns out to be the baritone's mother, and he turns out to be the waitress's father. So we have 3 generations of a family all inside these songs, and then the songs are inside this opera.
So this is another site-specific work, is it not? Isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's happening in the lighthouse, is that correct?
We split the piece into 2 halves because we just couldn't fit the whole audience into the lighthouse at once. So from these kind of limitations come your structure and the idea for the whole piece. So there was a cafe near the lighthouse, which is the nice big glass window that you can watch the lighthouse from. So we split the half the audience went to waitress in the cafe, and the other half went to this kind of strange man at the top of a lighthouse.
So simultaneously,
and then we split and they swapped over. So everybody, the 2 halves of the audience saw the show in a different order.
You essentially performed the opera twice.
Yeah.
And this was in Fraserburgh.
This was Fraserburgh Lighthouse, yeah.
So you must have had an astonishing view of the sea, and
it was absolutely stunning. You can't get a backdrop like that. I mean, it was a $1 million set. It really was, and I didn't have to do very much because it was just remarkable. We were able to take people by lantern light across to the lighthouse, and just as the light was coming and the dusk was setting, and even I think in the very last performance at night, it was quite near Halloween, so somebody started to set off fireworks on the beach. And so you were just getting these huge fireworks in the background of this glass window. The waitress was singing at the window. There's a guy singing at the top of the lighthouse. Yeah, it was really wonderful.
'Cause the dog don't bark, the stars don't shine. Since my baby left me, things ain't been going fine.
Caller? Caller? Are you there?
I always thought you looked nice.
Get you, sweet talker. You seen this girl's photo on the web?
I can see you from here. I see you still.
I think that's quite enough.
Golden corn, just like the song.
Aye.
Was that song for us?
I think you should go.
I don't want you to leave me again.
I think you should stay on the line and we can put you in touch with some professionals who can...
I can see you. You look scared. That's a strange question to... I'm scared. Apologies to my listeners. I'm not scared as some two-bit sado sitting at home in his pants trying to frighten a woman. Apologies for the language, but this beast is clearly mentally deficient. Can I say that? Well, I'm going to. Deficient.
My thanks to Gareth. In that extract from Last One Out, you heard Matthew Sprange as the caller and Anita Vertessa as the country singer and radio presenter. Before that, you heard an extract from the Sloanes Project performed by Noise Opera with the vocal talents of Miranda Sinani, Paul Cajon and Jamie McDougall. At the top of the show, Tender Hooks was performed by the Gareth Williams symphonic tradition. I'll Cadence When I Die will be back next month. Thanks for listening.